Good afternoon. This is Sudhalya Murugesan from ZSL. Welcome for the webinar Java EE Application Server Modernization Best Practices. The speaker for today's session is Srinivasan Ranganathan, Head Enterprise Architecture at ZSL. Srinivasan will discuss on the common business drivers for modernization, the technical and business challenges, the common mitigation and risk factors and growing needs involved in modernization of the applications and the best practices and guidelines followed by ZSL in application assessment and migration. During the presentation, all participants will be muted. You can submit your questions on the right-hand side of your screen using the chat window. We will answer some of the questions during the Q&A session that follows the presentation and answer any remaining questions offline. Today's presentation will be recorded and posted to the ZSL's TV and webinar page. With that, I would like to turn the presentation over to Srini. Welcome, Srini.
Hi, thank you, Sudhalya. As Sudhalya introduced, my name is Srinivasan Ranganathan. I work as a head enterprise architecture in ZSL. I have been working in the software industry for 14 years with 12 years experience in Java. So today's topic for the webinar is modernizing your Java Enterprise Edition application server infrastructure. So let's start jumping into it. Let's talk with agenda and move forward. Okay, this is the brief agenda of today's session. The first, we would like to introduce about ZSL and the practice area with which I'm working with. Then we will talk about the application server migration, the trends, the business challenges, and what are the technical challenges you might face or you will face, and what are the best practices around it, and what would be Zilog's value addition, and the last part of the session would be about any question and answers you might have. Thank you. Okay, this is the company overview. Zilog has been in the business for about 15 plus years. It is headquartered in Edison, NJ. We have a state-of-art research and development centers in US, Canada, and India. Zilog has grown and it has about 4,000 employees worldwide, and you can see in the slides pretty much all the locations which we have: US, UK, Canada, France, Germany, Malaysia, Singapore, Middle East, and India. We have a dedicated R&D division to offer value-added services and product developments. We invest in the emerging technologies and we specialize in those. We are pioneers in the verticals in the industry solutions like insurance, finance, e-governance, consumer electronics, and pharmaceuticals and telecom. We have proven partnership programs with ISVs, VARs, SPs, and SIs, and we are also certified solution providers. Okay, this gives a brief overview of the practice area which I am associated with. The practice area is called Enterprise Modernization Specialization. It is based out of NJ and offshore in Chennai, India. We do research and development, product development, and we do projects also. The main area which we focus here is legacy application migration, which is basically modernizing your legacy application, like examples like Power Builder to Java or Power Builder to .NET, Visual Fox Pro, Oracle Forms to Java or .NET, any of the legacy languages to the latest trends. The next section is application server migration. That's the JE application server migrations which we are going to talk about today. We also focus on database migration, and we focus on also operating system migration, application portfolio management, where we can rationalize applications and bring it down or up to meet the business needs. We also do enterprise architecture migration and modernizations, where it could involve performance enhancements or SOA modernization and things like that. So these are the broad areas within the enterprise modernization specialization of ZSL. Moving to the next slide. Okay, so let's get down to the main area of discussion today. So what is application server migration? Okay, application server migration is in the Java world is basically migrating the current existing application to another application server. Both are J2EE servers. Both are following the J2EE specifications. So the examples are given below. So it could be WebLogic WebSphere to JBoss TC server. It has in some areas we have seen where JBoss TC server, they are open source and they have less commercial licensing fees. They are growing in popularity. They are enterprise grade. So sometimes we see WebLogic WebSphere customers want to move to JBoss to save licensing costs. We have seen the other way also. People are working in JBoss or JRun, which is legacy right now. So they move to WebSphere WebLogic based on their based on their future vision, how much they want to grow. There are also things where we have seen people move from WebSphere to WebLogic or otherwise, Oracle Application Server being one of them. So so what is an application basically? An application could be a WAR or a ER file, which means that it's a web-based application or an application which contains EJB modules also. And when you do a typical application server migration, the life of the application which you already migrating may be 5 to 10 years. So it's quite possible that the old application which is being migrated is being developed and deployed on older versions of Java, which could be Java 1.2, 1.3, and the latest being right now is Java 6. So they might want to migrate to Java 6 or 7. So you need to do a Java version upgrade also. And it also, there might be chances where somebody wants to move away from a technology, like they might be heavily based on EJBs, and they might want to invest in Spring. So they might want to convert the EJBs to Spring. They might be in any of the JMS providers, maybe MQ. So they might want to move to the full Java JMS or maybe ActiveMQ, sometimes the otherwise. So it is just not the application migration, it's the whole application setup as such with all the peripherals around it. And it's quite possible that they might have web services implemented, which might be implemented with the vendor itself, so they might want to move to Access as their standards. So the migration also involves standardization and moving towards the future vision. And often we have seen that when you do the application server migration, you also upgrade your hardware and the operating system behind it. So the operating system, which is based on your legacy application, might be with an older version, or they might want to new versions of the same operating system, or they might want to change the operating system altogether. So these are all the things which can happen within the applications migration in the space. So sometimes there are some common questions which might be asked when it comes to application migration. So they're all JEE servers. They all specify to the specifications of Java Enterprise Edition. So why is this a big deal? Why can't I take the Java application as is and drop it in the new application server and I'm good to go? The reality is not that simple. They all follow the JEE specifications to the most part. So the migration is a lot less painful than any other legacy application modernization. But there are a lot of grounds to cover still. You have all your configurations, those needs to be migrated. There are a lot of subtle differences between different vendors. And when it especially comes to web services implementation or JMS, there are a lot of implementation issues which needs to be taken care of, which needs to be migrated. So it's not that investing in a Java Enterprise application is a mistake, but it's not as simple as it's just like dragging and dropping the WAR or ER file into the new application server, deploying it, and you are done with it. So there are some work needs to be done, which I will be going over in the next few slides. Okay, the next set of questions would be, Java always says compile once and run anywhere. So was I wrong in choosing Java? So you will still go to the compilation if you're upgrading it. Your interfaces, the way you have written all your Java APIs has never changed. It's just the wiring which changes. There are a couple of wirings which might have to be changed when you move from one application server to another application server. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so what are the business drivers? So normally, whenever you are doing some change and you are basically spending money on it, you need to have some business drivers. Why would one want to move from one application server to another application server when basically they are all the same? They all do the same work. They all are JE servers. They all conform to the specifications. So why do we do that? So here are some of the basic business drivers. There might be many, but some of the commons are here. So one is the licensing fees. So it's quite possible that the licensing fees of the particular application service has increased over the time. Or it's also possible that the application has grown, so you need to basically deploy it in more servers. You need to cluster it. You want to expand it, and basically you need to pay a lot more licensing fees than you initially started with. And nowadays, there are a lot of open source application server which are enterprise grade, which means that a lot of companies are deploying their enterprise applications in open source application servers. And there are also like Red Hat and VMware, which they provide very less licensing fees for support for their application server. So there's a trend when somebody wants to decrease the cost and they move to the open source to a different application server. And also, the second reason is application server landscape has been changing. There are a lot of application servers which was available about 5 to 10 years ago. Now it's no longer available, like JRun, Bluestone. Oracle application server with Oracle acquiring WebLogic. So Oracle is going to take WebLogic as their main application server. So the application server landscape is changing. So if you want to keep maintaining your application server, and if your application server is no longer supported, you might want to change it. The support issues regarding your issues, long-term strategic objectives. So it's quite possible that a particular company has realigned itself to another company which provides a complete solution, middleware, database. So nowadays you see more and more where different companies provide a complete solution set, including middleware, databases, operating system. So it might make sense for a company to have their long-term strategic goals aligned to a company so that they can get better support and better terms in terms of licensing. So that might be some of the reasons. Some of the reasons is architectural changes. You started out with the application being small, it has grown. Now you have a long-term vision for your application, and your current application server might not tend well to those changes, and you might want to migrate it. And one of the last reasons which we have specified here is acquisition, where we have seen where companies being acquired. So when the companies go through inorganic growth, they see a lot of different varieties of application servers and applications, and they want to consolidate all their application servers to one of the application servers which they choose. So when the consolidation happens, the application server migration also comes into that space. So these are all a couple of business drivers which might push a company to migrate their current Java enterprise application to a new application server. Okay, so the next question arises, how do you choose the right application server? Most of the times, what happens is when the business drivers basically causes you to choose the application server, and the business driver itself will tell you what application server is available for you to review and see which one you want to choose. So basically, like let's say if you want to reduce the cost, then you pretty much choose the couple of application server which is in your fees within your budget, and you start evaluating those and pick and choose one of them. or if you have a long-term strategic goal, then you already know which company you are aligning with, which vendor you are aligning with, and you basically choose that application server. And as we have seen, most of the application server are very competitive. They provide equivalency. So you need to look at the support, the stability, how much people are available in the market, the industry trends. So there is no one single way to figure out which application server will work out for a particular company. They have to evaluate it. They have to do some small test drives and figure out which application server they want to choose. Here are some of the major drivers in choosing the application server which has been listed, which could be the cost, support, stability, middleware support where they might have a ESB component, SOA component, and business rules management. So you might want some of those features for all the other applications. So middleware support might be one of the reasons. Deployment features, scalability, industry trends, and the monitoring. Nowadays, you really need to monitor your applications, do the real-time monitoring to take evasive actions against any issues you might face. So you might take all the considerations which are dear to you and make the right decision of choosing the application servers. Okay, so let's say that we had a business concern. We chose what application server we need to migrate to. So what is the list of business concerns a company might have? What is the business concern a stakeholder might have? Normally a stakeholder might have, why do I migrate? What is my ROI? My current application is running. It's doing the job. I'm getting what I need to do. My business is running. Why do I do that? What will be the disruption in business? So when I do the migration, how much time will it take to migrate? How much time will the application will be down? What will be the effort and cost and the time taken to migrate? So what is how much money I have to dole out to do this migration? How will be the performance? So right now I'm meeting the performance SLA, or maybe I'm not meeting the performance SLA of the client expectations. And what will be the performance? Will my performance degrade? Will it improve? And some of the other concerns are, what are the integration points? Normally what happens is an application interacts with an upstream system and downstream systems. They have integration points where some of the system calls in and you call out to some of the other systems. So it's part of a whole application portfolio. So what happens to those integration points? Does it mean that other applications have to change too? Does it mean that if I touch this, it will have a ripple effect? So these are some of the concerns. And what is the skill required for the migration? Do I have a team which has the proper skills? And what do I need to do to train my users and even the people who are maintaining this project, this application? So what is my training requirements? Is there going to be a new UI? Does my users need to know that there is a change and they have to be trained? Or does my maintenance guys need to know what needs to be, how things needs to be monitored, deployed, and what are the training they need to go through? So these are all the normal business concerns which might arise when you are doing a migration project. Okay, so to alleviate these business concerns, the stakeholders needs to basically come up with a migration requirement which the technical team has to adhere to. So based on all the migration concerns, they might say that, okay, my users doesn't need to go through any training, so I need my UI to exactly look the same. The user should not know there is a change in the UI. The functionality should be the same. There should be minimum disruption while migration. That means that, okay, you need to probably on off the switch during a weekend, during a planned downtime, where there should not be any loss of data, or if there is queue, all the messages has to be migrated to the new queue if there is a queue migration. So basically, they will set certain expectations, certain requirements for the migration project that will decide the success or failure for the project. And they will also say what is the risk mitigation plan, what is the rollback option which is available, So there are a couple of functional requirements and non-functional requirements which the stakeholders come up and say, this is the blueprint, this is what we want, and this has to be met at any cost. So that has to be taken to the technical team, who puts up a plan and who puts up enough checkpoints to make sure that they meet all these requirements, so that the migration is a painless migration and it turns out to be a success. If you do not have a proper migration requirement, it's quite possible that the technical team will not understand what the expectation of the business stakeholders are, and it's quite possible it might be a mismatch, and it might turn out to be a failure. Okay, so once you have the migration requirements in place, so next comes the technical plan. So what all do you need to do before you start the work? You still have to plan a lot. Make sure what you need, what the right skills you need. So these are certain pointers of what you need to do the technical planning. Okay, so you need to do an application assessment. You need to assess the current application. It's quite possible that since this application has been in production for a long time, the team who developed the application is no longer there. You have a new set of team who's maintaining it. So you need to do an application assessment, complete details about everything. What are its endpoints? What are the upstream messages going on, downstream messages going on, integration point, web services, how many EJBs do you have? So I'll go over what all things you need to do while you assess an application in the next couple of slides. So you need to do a complete assessment. You need to come up with a ballpark effort estimation, so how much it will take. That's something which needs to go back to the stakeholders to say, okay, we look the effort estimates to be this much, and so that the business can calculate the ROI based on how much they are going to spend on the migration effort. It's also important to look at the required skills for the migration. So migration project requires a different set of skills than a particular development project or maybe a maintenance team. A maintenance team might not be well equipped to do the migration. So you need to understand what all the skills that is required for this current application to be migrated. You need to put up with a migration plan. You need to come up with the testing plan, and also you need to have a detailed plan of what all you are going to do upgrade. Are you going to do a Java version upgrade? What does your hardware look like? Are you doing an OS migration also? Is it a totally different operating system or a new version of the operating system? So you need to be taking care. So these are all the things, pointers, which you need to take while you're doing the technical planning. You need to come up with a detailed plan document saying that, okay, this is in scope, this is out of scope, this will do in phase 1, this will do in phase 2, etc. And also, it will be nice if you look at the future vision and the business growth while you do the technical planning. It's not necessary that you're going to act upon it, but it's often that when you do a migration, you have a bigger plan. You have a bigger vision where you want to take your applications towards SOA, service-oriented architecture. You want to make it business to business so that your clients can integrate automatically using software with your business. So you might have a future vision or business growth. So it's nice to have that in the background to make an effective plan when it comes to migration. Okay, so these are all certain things which you normally do in an application assessment. It differs from application to application and its capabilities. Each J2E application is different. So these are all the common pointers which you need to assess when you are assessing an application. You need to understand the current architecture and design of the existing application. So it's often you can look at your old documents which was developed when this application was designed and deployed. Maybe they are out of date, but yet that will provide you some valuable pointers of how the application is architected, what are the different moving pieces of it. You need to understand the deployment architecture of the current application, how it's deployed. Is it clustered environment, non-clustered? And how many servers do you have? What is the HTTP protocols? Do you have any web services? What kind of web services are there? You need to do some metrics collections, like what are the third-party utilities you are using. They play a very important role. I will when I go through the future slides, I will say how some third-party tools affects your migration. So it's quite possible you might be using Apache Commons, Access, Xerxes API, XML APIs, iSpaces per se, anything you might use, third parties, which might affect your migration process. So you need to collect all those metrics just for to say that, okay, here is what I am looking at, and here are all the pieces I need to look at when I need to migrate, and make sure that these are all working fine. Inbound and outbound interfaces, you need to completely record all your inbound and outbound interfaces and test it completely to make sure. And there are very rare chances where you might have to touch your other applications which communicate with this application because maybe there is a small change in the WSDL or anything like that. So you need to be aware how it affects the other applications. Okay, the next thing is you need to understand how the current application is being built or deployed. Are you using Ant, Maven, and how do you like your future to be? Do you want to do continuous integration like Hudson? So what are its requirements? So you need to understand that while you do the application assessment. You need to look at the non-functional requirements also. You need to understand how the current application performs when it comes to monitoring, error handling, performance, and what is the expectations as set by the stakeholders as a migration requirement for your non-functional requirements. And as I said, future architecture and design needs, vision might not play a major role when you do the migration, but it will help you give a bigger picture, align yourselves, and plan yourselves when you do the migration. Okay. So how do you normally do effort estimation? So here are some pointers of how you do an effort estimation once you did a complete application assessment. So when you do an application assessment, you basically know what all you need to do. It's like, okay, I need to change my build. I need to move towards this build tool. I need to change EJBs to Spring application maybe because EJB 3 has improved a lot over EJB 2. But we do still see a lot of people moving towards Spring because Spring is not attached to a JEE container. You can even run outside the JEE container. You can do unit test cases without a JEE container. So there are a couple of advantages in using Spring. So some people want to move towards Spring applications or other lightweight containers. So when you do an application assessment, and you look into the migration requirements and you come up with a list of tasks, list of migration points, which we call as migration points, that needs to be done when you do the migration. So you collect all those things and look into those metrics which affects this migration point. So let's say you are converting an EJB, then you will look at how many EJBs do I have? Do I have entity beans? Do I have session beans? So if I have entity beans, am I going to use Hibernate for that? So you collect all these metrics and probably classify them. And if you have vendor jar files, you look into those vendor jar files and see third-party jar files and see how well will that be, when I migrate, what will it affect? Do they have a latest version? Are there known bugs in the current version which I'm using, which has been fixed in the latest version? So you identify all the migration points which needs to be changed when you do the migration. Based on that, you come up with an effort depending upon the skill set of the people which we have for migration. Is there any learning curve? Are there any unknowns? So there is no pure easy math to do the effort estimation saying that, okay, I want to convert into EJBs into Spring. It might take 2 days for an EJB. So there's no easy answer for that. It depends upon how the coding guidelines which has been used, how is the application designed. We have seen often where people write a lot of code within the EJB instead of calling into a POJO. They tightly align themselves with the classes. So what happens is it becomes difficult to separate. it's a very good idea to put all your business logic in, all your business IP and algorithm business rules in POJOs with clear method definition and interface definition where you have inputs and outputs. If they are not designed it that way, it might be a lot of task for you to refactor those code in and fit into the new application server. So it depends upon how the application is designed to start with. So the effort estimation has to be done that way by an experienced Java developer or architect per se, to say how much time it will take to do the conversion. And it's always good to add enough buffer. I will go over some of the easy, medium, and hard tasks which we have found in migration projects which we have done so far, so based on our experience. So it's always good to have buffer. There could be certain unknown issues which might crop up after you do the migration while the testing phase and things like that. So it's nice to always have a buffer. Okay. So let's go and talk about a little bit about what are the migration tasks. So how would you go about a migration? So you have all the migration points. You have a very neat document of what is the expectation, what are you going to change, what technology you are going to change. So you have everything. So normally, how do you go about migrating it? So this is one of the pointers which we normally follow. So the first thing you do in a migration is to make sure that you can compile the source again. So nowadays, when all the application server like WebSphere, JBoss, DC server has some kind of tools which to some level automates and pinpoints the areas where you need to migrate, and even to some extent migrates that automatically. So if you have WebLogic XML files, WebSphere might have, the tools will help. There is an Eclipse plugin which will help you to migrate those XMLs directly to the WebSphere config XMLs, so that you don't have to manually do that. It will also point to problematic areas where you might want to, and it will also give you some tips of how to go about and change those points so that it can be deployed into WebSphere application. So the tools will go a long way in doing a lot of this work, where it will easily identify you and give you a kickstart in solving the migration mismatch problems. So you can use these tools and do the migration. And what you need to do next is try to compile this application and create a WAR file or the ER file. So if you have Anvil or Maven build, try to set the libraries. You might have your libraries which are pointing to your old application server. So you might have, let's say you are moving from Tomcat to WebSphere, for example. So you might have some Tomcat jar files in your compilation path. You might have to realign those things. So and you also have to use, if you are upgrading the Java version, you need to have the new Java installed and compile it with that compiler. If you are upgrading some vendor jar files, this is a good time to do so. Even though your old jar files might work, it's quite possible that certain bugs which has been fixed in the newer version, and you didn't touch this application for years, so you have an outdated jar file out there, which might not be supported if you have any issues with them. So you put all the new jar files and try to compile it. There are chances that you might have some compilation errors, class not found, like some certain classes not found, so the compilation fails. So these are all issues which you will go through, look at those issues when you do the compilation, fix it. Then once you have a jar or WAR file, you basically go ahead with the deployment. So you deploy it in a particular application, the new application server, and closely look at the application server coming up and the application coming up. You will see issues there. Your config files might be out of order. The application might not come up right. You might have some certain stack traces coming up. So you need to look into those and solve those issues. And those, most of the times we have found those issues will be unique to each and every project, because each and every project is unique. The libraries are unique. What they do is unique. So you need to have a good experience in Java to solve those problems. We'll go over some of the known issues for us in the next couple of slides. So solve the deployment issues, deploy it, make the application come up successfully. Then the next set of issues would be runtime issues, where you can basically, a smoke test might reveal that. So when you do a smoke test of the major feature of the application, you might have some class loading issues. When it comes to Java, the compilation will not catch all the missing classes. It's quite possible that some of the classes are loaded at runtime using configurations where you they are decoupled. So while compilation you might not find it, but while running it you might find it. Class loading issues, class cast exceptions. Well, there are a couple of issues which you'll find when you do the smoke test. So you have to go and fix those things. Then finally, the biggest piece is to do a complete testing in and out of this application to figure out any other runtime issues. Other runtime issues might be difficult, where you might not get any, your front end might behave well, but you might have exceptions at the back end, which was not happening in your old application server. It's quite possible that there's no exceptions in the back end also, and your front end works fine, but your numbers don't match. There are some calculations or algorithms you are doing and the numbers don't match. I'll give you some of my experiences on that, about what the runtime issues which we face and how we solved it, to give you an idea about what you might expect. And it's quite possible that you might not face those issues. And if the old application is designed well, developed well, you might not face those issues also. So it's quite possible. So you go through these steps of migration until you fix all the issues and go through complete QA testing. And if the application has some performance SLAs to meet, you might want to do even a performance test, load test, stress test also, and some capacity planning to make sure that you can scale up to your expectations. Okay. So I will go over some of while we went through, based on our experiences, while we went through some of these migrations, we had certain issues which we have faced. So let me go through that and try to explain you, to give you what kind of issues might crop up. It's quite possible that you might get some of the issues which is not specified here. This is just based on our experience. Okay. So the easy ones, I have classified that to easy, medium, and hard. So let me probably talk about a little bit of the easy issues which you will have. The easy issues are the compile time issues, because when you compile, they will complain that certain classes are not available for when they are compiling it. So you just need to figure out in the whole application server which jar file had the class and make sure that particular jar file is in the compile time. If your new application server has those jar files inbuilt, you need to make sure that you point to that. Or there are other compile time issues you might have. That's quite possible that when you did a Java version upgrade, an abstract classes basically had new methods in it which are abstract now, and you have to implement them. If you go from JDBC 2 to 3, the result set and callable statement has some extra methods. If you are implementing those interfaces or abstract classes, you might want to implement the new methods in it. Otherwise, it will throw in an error saying that you have not implemented those abstract methods. There might be some interface mismatch. There might be some issues when you are doing Java upgradation, where Java 5 and 6 has this array list where you can specify the type. You can say array list of string, so that you make sure that when you get it, you get a string. You don't need to do, you cannot put any other object other than string, so strong typecasting. So you might want to take advantages of that. There might be some XML configuration file issues. Let's say JDBC resource connections, GIND lookup. Some of these things are easy. So you can easily be able to look at the target application server, how things are done. You might Google, get it faster. The GIND lookup in WebSphere is different than in WebLogic. They're different in JBoss. and most of the times the tools will recognize that for you. And there might be some deployment issues which might be easy. So these are all the list of easy issues which you might face when you are doing a migration. Okay. These are all some of the medium ones, and sometimes these medium ones can also still to be harder enough. So some of the medium ones which we found is web services. So if the old application uses the vendor-specific WebSphere implementation, and nowadays we have seen a lot of applications which don't work their way from WSDL to implementation. They run a Java code and they create Java code, then say, okay, I want to expose this as web services. The app service has made that easy. It's quite possible that when you move that to a new application server, the vendor is different, the way they handle it, so you might have to make changes. We always recommend that it's not a good way to very tightly engage with the vendor because you don't have much control on the WSDL. And what happens is that if the WSDL changes, all your upstream and downstream system gets affected. So sometimes, depending upon your circumstances, it might be a good approach to work your way through WSDL and probably use some third-party vendors like Apache Access, Apache Camel to implement your web services so that you're not tightly aligned with a vendor. But if you have long-term goals where you know what you're going to do with the vendor, vendor does provide a lot of ability to reduce the amount of work done in exposing web services, and for some clients it might be beneficial to them. So when you are especially migrating web services, it might be medium ones, you need to refactor it, you need to make sure your WSDL doesn't change. If your WSDL changes, then you need to make sure that the integration points and other applications are let known of the change so that they can make changes to their code. Okay. And it's quite possible that if you have an interface to other applications like MQ or any other way you are interacting with other applications, it might change, it might not. Some of the other medium problems is null pointer exceptions, class cast exceptions, class not found exceptions. Sometimes they are easy, sometimes they are medium, and sometimes they are hard because it's very difficult to track how those classes are loaded because most of the times are loaded at runtime, some config files. So it's quite possible that some config files you didn't properly update it, and they didn't find the right classes, find the right factory classes, and basically you are finding some exception somewhere, whereas your problem lies somewhere else. But since it didn't report an exception, then it went further in the execution and got a problem somewhere else. So it might give you wrong pointers that, oh, I'm getting an exception in this Java file, but probably 3 or 4 stacked down, there was a mistake somewhere else which led to this problem. So they might be a little bit tougher to solve. So I have classified them as medium ones. Some of the things are vendor upgrades, so you need to make sure that if the vendor upgrades doesn't work with the new app server, I'll give you some pointers to that. We have found where when we migrated from, we had an application which we tried to deploy in WebLogic, the iSpaces application did not work. It threw some null pointer exception, and we found out that the iSpaces had certain issues with WebLogic, the way sessions was maintained and managed. So we had to raise a request to iSpaces and at the same time to WebLogic to try to solve this issue. So there are certain times you might face problems with vendor upgrades. Okay, application refactoring. So if you want to convert EJBs to POJOs, depending upon how your EJBs is designed, you might have to refactor a lot of code. So these are all the medium ones. Okay. Hard ones. So a couple of hardest issues are described here. These are all based on certain experience of ours in doing migration projects, or we have even done certain projects or products where we make our application app server agnostic so that it can be deployed into multiple app servers. We have subtle changes in the WAR file during our build process, but we have the same code base which gets deployed into multiple app servers. So certain harder ones which require probably a lot of time is sometimes there might be some memory leaks. There are chances where you see some server-side exceptions, basically which is harmless. You feel that it is harmless. Your app server in the front end works fine. Your application works absolutely fine. You get the right numbers, but the exception keeps occurring. Normally, there are times where you are tempted to say, okay, let me ignore that. My application runs fine. And it's quite possible that after 2 to 3 days, it might buckle up and you might have to restart the server. So we have had some memory leaks, and that was specifically with IceFaces and WebLogic, where we had the IceFaces did not clean up their IceFaces has a server-side image of your client DOM. So when the session got killed, it was not able to detect it properly in WebLogic, and it didn't clean up. So when you log out from the application which we developed, it threw a null pointer or some kind of an exception on the back end. We didn't really worry about it, but basically what happened was the memory was not cleaned up. It piled up, and we got into memory leaks once in a day or two. Those are some of the things which we had a very tough time figuring out what's happening. So it even went to the extent of we opening the source code of IceFaces and debugging through it to figure out why this exception is happening. And luckily, IceFaces was open source, so we were able to go through the code to figure out what's happening and to basically even tell IceFaces what the problem is, because it might be difficult for even the vendor to recreate it because your application is unique. The way you have done it is unique. There are one issue where we have found that there is a functional bug, and we found that the numbers were wrong. It was application which was working properly in JBoss and didn't work in WebSphere, and we found out that internally when we are calling an EJB, JBoss sends the arguments by reference, and WebSphere sends it by a value. And somebody had a bad coding practice where in an EJB the arguments are passed and they were changing some values inside the arguments itself rather than sending the results out back. So they were making some changes and expecting the change to be on the callee side, which was working fine in JBoss, but never worked in WebSphere, and we got some wrong numbers. And it was a very difficult time to figure out that somebody has done a mistake. So coding-wise, it's okay. But if you see best practices, it's a bad way to design, especially when you're looking at certain classes to be used across JVMs when you're doing load sharing the work. So you need to make sure that you follow, and you should be ready that your apps or your two modules could be in different JVMs, and that could be serialized, which means that only the return values are serialized back and they are passed by value. So this is one of the hard problems which we have to go through, where the application was working perfectly, there was no exception on the server, and no extra problems on the client, and everything looked great, but when you look closely in certain numbers, it was a problem. We have faced certain issues, class loading issues with IceFaces, where in the versions of WebSphere, I'm not aware of the newer versions of WebSphere whether we have the same problem, but WebSphere had some JSF implementation within it. So when we deployed the WAR file, certain JSF classes of WebSphere got, because it's a parent class holder. So basically when you have these class loaders, the parent class loader gets the first chance to load the classes, and there's a class mismatch between IceFaces and the class loader from the WebSphere. So we had some very weird problems until we went to the application and said, okay, invert the class loader. The class loaded by the application gets priority over the class loaded by the WebSphere. So it's very likely that the class loader might create very unique problems where you will find class cast exception, when it will say that I am trying to cast this particular class to this particular class, and it's not allowed, but both the classes will be the same. Maybe it will say I'm just coming up with a class. It might just say that, oh, I'm trying to convert com.sun.faces servlet to faces servlet, you will still see the same class as your target and the source, and you'll see, okay, it's the same class. Why can't it do a type of class casting? You should be able to do it. It's not a class mismatch, but it's quite possible that they are loaded by different class loaders, or they are slightly different versions, and they throw an error. So these issues might be challenging when the class loader from the application to server takes priority. So we have faced numerous issues in EJBs and all those things where this has created havoc, and we have spent days and sometimes weeks in troubleshooting these issues. Okay, so we have even one of the other issues, a DB2 driver, JDBC driver, which we had a specific problem with ZOS operating system, where if we had to set a timestamp, we needed a timestamp, but we set a date variable. All the other JDBC drivers took that date and converted it into timestamp, but with the ZOS implementation, we had some issues. So these are all couple of hard ones which I have described. This is not to kind of scare people from doing the migration, but just to know that there could be some unknowns which you might face, which might be unique to you. So just be prepared for that. Make sure that you have the right expertise to handle these kind of research issues when it comes to migration. And it's quite possible there are certain migrations where we never faced any of these issues. We just had the easy ones and few medium ones, and we are done with. Okay, so these are all certain suggestions. It's quite possible that you might want to migrate in the future too, maybe 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line. So here are some suggestions which makes it easier to migrate, or even easier to maintain. Let's not even worry about migration in the future, just easier to maintain. So some of the common factors make it vendor neutral. So if your particular app server vendor is providing you certain things, nowadays there are vendors which provide certain things and also say that, okay, if you are moving to other applications or you are running in a non-JE environment, you can take the jar files and deploy as part of your application. So you can do it. So as long as you know what you are doing. Have interfaces for intermodal interaction. Make sure that you design it in a service-oriented architecture manner where you have clearly defined interfaces, clearly defined communication within different modules, so that tomorrow, even if you are going towards SOA, even you are doing exposing your applications to for integration with other application, you can do a better job in refactoring it if you have a clear modular design. When it comes to modules, we have seen a lot of intercoupling. If you want to have intercoupling, it's a necessary. Have a clean separation. Have callback interfaces instead of calling into each other classes, so that somebody can have a listener model, so you can attach a listener and get a callback. So there are various ways of intercoupling to not have intercoupling of modules, which will help in migration, which will help in your maintenance, help in one thing is for sure, your application will never stay as constant. It will go through changes. To go through changes, you should be adapt for the changes. Okay, and one of the common pointer we say is that a lot of times they want to have a bigger vision, so they want to modernize it, they want to have new APIs, they want to do a lot of things new, they have a bigger plan, and do not take modernization and migration at the same time. If you take it, plan it well, but we normally say that to reduce the risk, first migrate, then modernize. Okay. This basically tells a little bit about testing. We say that you need to do a complete testing. Smoke testing alone is not enough. As I said, in the harder ones, you might have certain problems in certain places where it will never come up in smoke testing. So you need to do a complete end-to-end testing. The risk is more here because once you go to production, you might have some issues and it might take weeks for you to fix it. So it's better to get all the issues as much as possible during the testing phase. So we recommend full regression testing and fixing those issues, even looking at the numbers. Do not just say, okay, my UI comes fine, the numbers look approximately right, I'm not going to compare the numbers. So depending upon our application, if there are some calculations, takes up some test cases and make sure that your calculations are getting right. If you are doing some, if you have some performance SLAs to meet, we recommend load testing and performance testing and stress testing, capacity planning. If you are going through clustering, you need to make sure that your hardware is capable of doing it. So you need to make sure, and normally we have seen that the new application server and the new Java version is always better. It's not your application normally, if it is migrate as is, we have rarely or probably never seen that the application performance has degraded. Mostly the application performance is bad due to coding practices and the design of the application, not much on the application server and the Java version dependent. As you see, the products are far more regression tested. They have been tested in the market. A lot of people are using it. So the first pointer we normally look at is the current application design rather than pointing to the finger to the newer application or this one. Okay, then the last piece is deployment and maintenance. Okay, but you just have to maintain, modernize the application, monitor the application closely for the first few weeks, train users if needed, especially train the people who are maintaining this application. All these tools normally comes with monitoring capabilities also. So make sure that you monitor the exception logs for at least for the first few weeks. Make sure that there is no surprises. Plan your deployment, plan your cutoff from the old application server, have a backup plan, maybe have that application ready, the old one ready just in case that if the new one is unusable or you found some issues which is very problematic so that you cannot move forward. So you need to make sure that your old application is ready to kick on and serve the customers until you fix the new one, the new problems. So have a proper plan and deploy and maintain. Okay, then the next things is that some of the common issues is that should we outsource or should we do it ourselves when it comes to these things? So again, it depends upon company to company, the client to client. So if they see that, okay, what are the major thing they need to look into it, what is the capabilities of the current team which they have? Is the current team can only can maintain? Have they developed application? Is this the same team which developed this application that is migrating? How critical is that application to my business? If it is less critical, can I take the risk of doing it myself? How complex is my application? What is my budget? There are times if I have problems, can I hire consultants? So these are all the various questions you might have. Normally we have seen that many clients do not have proper infrastructure to do the migration. What they have is they have a team who can maintain, who are developers but have developed some small applications. So when you are migrating a complex enterprise application, especially to new app server, one needs to know both the old app server and the new app server capabilities. So the skills required is far more. You need to have somebody at least who is 10+ years experience to handle some of the complex issues, class loading issues, or even if you have less experienced people, they should be research oriented. They should be able to they should have the aptitude to solve unknown problems. They should have aptitude to debug some open source code, look into the issues, Google it, somehow try to solve it. So how much of work do you currently have? Is your current team already engaged in current enhancement and things that they don't have much time for this migration? This migration should not be done as a half-hearted this one where you spend 2 hours, 3 hours a day for the team to migrate it, or just spend 1 week, put it downside because you had other important issues, then come back to it. It should be a focused approach. So these questions might help you decide whether you want to outsource it or do you have the inbuilt capabilities to do it. We normally say that if you have a very strong software development team and if they have enough bandwidth to do it, they can do it, but if they do not, it's good to outsource it. And it's quite possible that outsourcing will also be cheaper, and you don't have to increase your team size and downsize it later. So that outsourcing might give you a lot of benefits. Okay, so what does Zilog does in this offering? Zilog has a lot of experience in application migration. Zilog also has a lot of experience in building Java application, which is vendor neutral. All our internal applications or anything which we do we try to make sure that it's vendor neutral. We try to design if there is a need where the migration would be painless, or not even the migration, we can deploy it in multiple app servers with different config files, of course, but we have a lot of experience. We have experience in WebSphere, WebLogic, JBoss, TC Server. So we have different teams, different expertise level which can come together to do a migration project. We have offshore and nearshore approach for the cost savings, where our offshore in India could effectively do the migration. We have a lot of expertise in India, and also good expertise in onshore, nearshore, where we can provide good customer support and also guide the team in India to get the job done. So at times it's quite possible that you might have the bandwidth to do it internally, or you can normally size it, but we can do it cheaper too. We have a consistent framework that guarantees success. We also do fixed cost and fixed time, so you do not run into the risk of time and materials where you do not know how much the migration is going to cost. We take that risk of the unknowns. So we have a set of tools. There are a lot of tools available, and we also have developed some best practices and some pointers and tools and some database of commonly known problems. So we do have, which will considerably decrease the time of migration. We have a very responsive team. We can even take up user testing, performance testing and everything. We are running out of time. I'll try to quickly complete this. So if you are looking at reducing costs, there are chances, there are clients which offer to use their testing team, but you need to make sure that you're doing a complete end-to-end testing, including performance testing and everything, if you have a performance SLA, of course. So if you want to do some cost reduction when you are doing outsourcing, there are certain things Zilog can offload as testing and things. Since you know the application better, you can offer those services, and we can do the migration, and we can work as an extended team. Or there are things where if you do not have, even in the testing space, we can take that testing and do it all ourselves. Okay, I will quickly go over this. This is our 7-phase approach when it comes to application server migration. Basically, we have defined each phase based on our past experience and say what all we do in each phase. And we have some deliverables for each phase, so we keep the client completely informed of what's going on, what is your application, what we have assessed, what all the migration points, what all the statistics, like this many servlets you have, this many JSPs you have, that might not affect the migration per se, but that gives a clear picture of how much unknowns you might get, how big is the application, what are you looking at. So we have an assessment phase which will engage with the client. We'll look into their documents and design. There are times we will even do the system study and provide them the documentation. We look into the deployment architecture. We give them suggestions of what the target should look like, whether it should be clustered, how many servers they are looking at, to capacity plan everything. We do the discovery phase, where we go through all the WAR files, ER files, give a complete stock of the current application. We plan, the third phase is the planning, where we go through the target application server. We say what are the capabilities of that, what fits to the current client, which meets their business objectives. We will give the target deployment architecture. We will say the mapping. EJBs is mapped to Spring, WebSphere is mapped to this, software, this vendor is being upgraded, XSS libraries is upgraded, We are going to take off these things. We are going to do strong typecasting. We are going to use enums. So we will completely describe what we are planning, how much the work is going to be done when we do the migration. Then we go through the migration process. As I said, we do the automatic migration, manual migration, we fix compile time issues, deployment time issues, runtime issues, and we'll fix all testing related. Once we tested all the issues which comes off it, we'll fix it. We completely support the testing. Either it could be a testing which the client says we will do it on our own, we'll provide you the bugs and you can fix it, or we will do the complete testing based on, we will understand the application, write scripts, automated scripts if necessary, do manual testing if necessary, whichever falls best, whichever reduces cost, whatever the client requirements are. We can even turn over those scripts so that the clients can use it for their enhancements. So the automation scripts can be a value add for a client where they can use when they keep enhancing their application and maintaining their application. We can do new enhancements. We can do performance improvements. There are times where our clients have given performance improvements for us, and we troubleshoot their issues and improve their performance, improve their coding practices. We can even do new development. We can take care of the maintenance if the client wants to. Then we go through the deployment phase. We give complete support during production releases. We are available 24/7 for any issues on-site, near shore, or even off-site. Then we also provide functional maintenance for the clients. Okay, I apologize. I'm about 5 minutes late. We are to the questions section. So probably we'll take up very few questions, and other questions could be handled. We could email you about the answers also. So we'll get back.
Thank you, Srinivasan. Actually, apologies for running late due to time constraint. I would like to take the questions offline. So can you please move on to the contact slide?
Okay, sure.
So you can email us your questions at info@zslinc.com or call us at 732-549-9770. I would like to thank everyone for joining us on today's webinar. Thank you. Have a great day.